So I'm Terry. I've used PKD for years. It has brought brightness, sparkle, flair to my life and to my plates. It can do to you as well. One thing today I would like to share with you, though, is a secret. Despite manufacturers' warnings, I use PKD washing up liquid to unclog my brains. Why don't you?
Hey, dickheads! Like a pink laser beam of truth beaming straight from San Diego, California to your brain hole. We are your Nexus 6 models, and we are trying our best to avoid the Blade Runners. Today, we are talking about the 1982 classic, the first Philip K. Dick adaptation, Blade Runner. We're here to talk about Blade Runner.
Blade Runner!
Woo! This is our month of Blade Runner, returning from our season break. So what is this, season 3 of Dickhead?
Yep.
All right. So, anywho, joining me today is...
Anthony Trevino.
Anthony, tell them who you are, what you do.
They already know who I am. Oh, my God. All right. So, I'm an amateur mortician.
Supermodel.
And no. I am an author and a film critic. Anthony Trevino. That's me.
Yeah, and David Agranoff. I'm author of Goddamn Killing Machines and Punk Rock Ghost Story. Langhorn.
And I'm Langhorn J. Tweed.
All right. On that note, hey, listen, we are probably, this is Blade Runner. There's going to be people that happen upon this that have never listened to our show. Well, so for anyone who's not familiar with our podcast, we are the Dickheads, and we are covering all the Philip K. Dick novels in order of publication with various other Dick-adjacent science fiction and chicanery involved in the new wave of science fiction from the 60s, which we are all fans of. This is the doozy. This is the big one. This is the one that put our boy Phil on the map, so it's really important. And the first option for this movie goes back to 1968 when the book was published. So the development of Blade Runner as a film, or Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, is very long. We are not going to talk that much about the novel. We did a whole episode on that, so if you have not listened to our Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep episode, I suggest that, because if you want to hear about mercerism and mood organs and all that stuff, you got to go to that one.
Yeah, we'll get into it a little bit in the comparison.
Yeah.
Part,
For our longtime listeners, you guys got any updates you want to talk about? Anything coming up?
Anything relevant? Does
it have to be relevant to PKD? Is that
there was an article just published about how AI intelligence is learning empathy, and how the Voight-Kampff test might not be relevant in the coming future, because we are teaching computers how to understand emotion and empathy. So,
Which isn't that far off from the movie, because
that was where they were headed in the movie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I saw that article. I didn't read it in depth, but I scanned it a little bit and meant to come back to it. But I do think that was curious. As far as things that are going on with the Blade Runner world, I know there's still comics and things like that being produced, but
the comic Blade Runner 2019 is really good, you guys. So good that we did some videos on it.
So one other update I would want to give is that Mr. Tweed and I did two episodes of my other podcast, Postcards from a Dying World, where we did our best. I did my best reads of the year, and then Larry and I talked about our favorite movies of 2020. But yeah, so there's fun movie and book talk. So if you don't get enough of us,
there's always that.
There's always that.
Wait, is this like a pseudo plug section? Are we doing pseudo plugs? Is that what we're doing?
Pseudo plug?
Yeah, do it.
Oh, well, because Hissers 3 comes out this year, which I co-wrote with Ryan C. Thomas, so you all have that to look forward to. We just finalized the cover art for it with two artists who are going to basically redo all 3 book covers, so it's going to be pretty bitchin'.
That is awesome. I am very excited to see.
Do you have a release date?
Release date is TBD because it's getting proofread right now by somebody that's not Ryan or I, because I can't look at that fucking thing anymore. I've read it 3 times now. I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, I got to see Anthony write the beginning of that book when we did our retreat last summer. So
It's true.
Yeah, very excited for that.
Where I rewrote his entire first chapter because it was boring. Love you, Ryan.
All right. On that note, let's get into Blade Runner. As I said, we'll start with the story and publication history. We don't need to go into the publication history of the novel because we did that extensively in the Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep episode, but it is interesting to talk about the history of the option because this was one that PKD optioned as far back as 1968. I believe the year it was published. It may have been even before it was published. And the first option was optioned to a man named Bertram Berman. And what I learned about him via Google was that he was a producer on the Bob Hope Show and a courtroom drama called The Verdict Is Yours. And
Was that like a precursor to the People's Court?
Yeah, something like that. But it was it was a courtroom show, so it was like I think it was like a Perry Mason ripoff.
Oh, okay.
But old Berman retired from Hollywood and went to teach at a film school at the University of Cincinnati. And his obituary, the headline was, gave Spielberg his start. But I couldn't figure out from the obituary how he gave Spielberg his start, but I'm assuming he was also a producer on Night Gallery because that's where Spielberg had his first directing gig, was on Night Gallery. Rod Serling's show after The Twilight Zone. But I could be wrong about that. I don't have facts on that. I'm just going by what I read in the obituary for old Bertram Berman, who first...
solid name. That is a solid name.
Yeah, and he owned the option for Blade Runner, or no, for Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep until 1973, when they were bought by Herb Jaffe. And
The name I know.
yeah, Herb. Well, you might know her. There's a film of his that you will know, and we're probably all fans of. But Herb Jaffe and his son Robert collaborated on their version of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. They bought the option together. They are known for their first big film together was Demon Seed, which was an adaptation of Dean Koontz's novel Demon Seed. And Robert Jaffe, his most successful film was the 1987 version of George R.R. Martin's awesome novella Night Flyers, which is not a great movie. It was a low budget. It was okay. Yeah, Anthony likes it.
I was thumbs upping the show.
Oh, yeah, it did become a show, and he was an executive producer on that just because he owned the rights to the movie. The novella Night Flyers by George R.R. Martin is fucking incredible. It's great.
It's good. It's good.
But his dad, Herb Jaffe, his best film, in my opinion, is he was one of the producers of Fright Night, Tom Holland's
Nice.
Fright Night. Herb Jaffe wrote a script of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep that was not PKD's favorite. So we'll get into that in a minute. But according to PKD, and this may be apocryphal, but he claims that he had meetings with Martin Scorsese and Jay Cox about doing Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, but the only proof that we have of this is Phil saying it. I've never seen anything in any of the stuff I've read about Scorsese saying that he developed that. But this would have been early when he was Scorsese. I don't even know if he had done Mean Streets. He was...
What year?
This would be when the Herb Jaffe option was floating around 73.
So yeah, he had done. I think he had done Mean Streets by then.
Yeah, and he did a couple movies like a Boxcar Bertha or something for Roger Corman at that point. So
Herb Jaffe was also the executive producer of Motel Hell.
Yes, and his son wrote Motel Hell. Yes. So yeah, PKD was not a fan of their work, but I do.
Oh, PKD not a fan of Motel Hell, huh?
There in the notes, we have the first quote. It began years ago, PKD explains.
Martin Scorsese and Jay Cox were both interested in androids, but they didn't option it. That was the first movie interest in any property of mine. Then later, Herb Jaffe optioned it, and Robert Jaffe did a screenplay back about 1973. The screenplay was sent to me, and it was so crude that I didn't understand that it was actually the shooting script. I thought it was the rough. I wrote to them and asked if they would like me to do the shooting script, at which point Robert Jaffe, the one who wrote the screenplay, flew down here to Orange County and confessed that he had written it under a nom de plume. I said to him then that it was so bad that I wanted to know if he wanted me to beat him up there at the airport or wait till we got to my apartment.
Ouch!
Robert Jaffe was very straightforward and asked Dick if he really thought it was that bad, whereupon Dick responded candidly, I said, all I ask is that you do not drag me down to ruin with you. I said that I'd honestly prefer to buy back the property than let them make a film based on that screenplay, and he was real nice about it. I gave him suggestions, and he took notes, and then I noticed that he wasn't actually writing, but rather he was just moving the pen about 1/4 of an inch from a piece of paper that already had printing on it, so that he was only pretending to take notes. I realized then there was a gulf between me and Hollywood.
So what we know about the Robert Jaffe... the Robert and Herb Jaffe version of the script is that they wrote it as a comedy.
Really? That's a bad idea.
Like a Get Smart type.
Ooh.
This is about two cops on the hunt for an electric sheep.
Yeah, something like that.
By the way, Mean Streets did come out in 1973. So.
Yeah, and I'm sure the first thing Martin Scorsese wanted to do was an android movie after Mean Streets, but maybe.
What came after Mean Streets? Was it Taxi Driver?
Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also a good movie, but
very good. But that was for TV, wasn't it?
Not. It doesn't say that here.
Yeah. Oh well. But if you think that PKD was being hard on Jaffe, then how about the rest of the next quote?
A producer by the name of Herb Jaffe has an option on Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. I don't dare badmouth his silly movies, but if you're listening, Herb Jaffe, I love your money, but you sure write lousy scripts. You're a Neanderthal man. You're back with George, pal, and I don't want you to make a movie out of my book. The screenplay that they wrote for Androids was a combination of Steve Reeves and Maxwell Smart. Robert Jaffe, Herb Jaffe's son, flew down to Fullerton to talk with me about it because I didn't think it was a final shooting script. I thought it was just a rough draft. I told him, I'm going to beat you up right here in the airport because you're going to drag me down with you guys and ruin my career if you make a movie out of my book. He said, you mean it's that bad? And I said, yeah. Finally, he said, you mean you wrote that book seriously? You science fiction writers take your work seriously? I said, seriously enough to throw you right out of this moving car. I said, I'm going to buy it back from you and give you the $2,000 option money back. Then we had a 4-hour rap session, which was very productive. They didn't make the movie. They just continued to hold the option, and I'm hoping they don't make the movie unless they write a decent script.
Wow. Well, that's the other version.
I want to believe they had a 4-hour rap battle.
Right. Well, what's funny is he's saying he threatened to beat him up, and they went on to talk about it for 4 hours. So I wonder if he's exaggerating just how rough he was on Jaffe.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he is.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
I don't see.
Phil is the, I think we've seen
threatening kind of guy.
No, but as we've seen throughout doing this, violence. He is prone to embellish the truth.
Right. And so we know that They spent 2 years on this before Hampton Fancher, who eventually co-wrote the screenplay for the final movie, bought the option from them in.
I don't know if co-wrote is the correct term.
Yeah,
he wrote the original screenplay.
He wrote the original screenplay, but a lot of the scenes in the finished movie are word for word out of his script. So,
scripts did this go through before production started, not including the shooting script?
Well, Hampton Fancher did multiple drafts before the one that was turned in, that was the first working script that they bounced around to Hollywood, was, I think, his third or fourth draft, and that's the one I read from 1980.
Yeah, but then Dan O'Bannon did not write a script for this.
No, he wrote Screamers.
No, that's that I feel like is an urban legend.
I always want to say he wrote a script for this, but he didn't.
I do too.
Yeah.
So what happened is that Dan O'Bannon was, I think his interest in the stories that are in We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, and him trying to shop that around is what I believe got PKD the interest in Hollywood in general. Because Hollywood is that way. If one person's interested in the work of an author, then a lot of times that,
other works become interesting to Hollywood.
Yeah, because they're like, why is that person interested? And so
did Dan O'Bannon and Philip K. Dick were they friends, or did they talk?
I don't think they ever met.
Okay.
No, I think that's a Tessa question. We'll have to ask Tessa, but I don't know. I would imagine there was a good 10-year period between when he started working on Second Variety and all that. I think that there's a good likelihood that they did meet each other. And I know PKD read an early script for Second Variety for Screamers. So he did read one of the scripts, and I remember reading that he liked it. We'd have to go back to our episode on that and see, but yeah. So the Hampton Fancher script, I read the script, and we'll get into the differences. But there are a lot of scenes in the final movie that are word for word exactly like the original Hampton Fancher script. Yes,
Fancher.
But the Hampton Fancher script, I think the 1981 is it's very different from the finished product, but there are entire scenes, the Voight-Kampff test from the beginning, the first scene where he meets Rachel, the scene between him and Rachel. Most of the scenes between him and Rachel are exactly the same. The one in the apartment, the first one in the apartment is the same. Some of all the characters are there. Hannibal Chew, but instead of it being in a freezer and a weird thing, it's like a nightclub, which reminded me of the world Jones made, actually.
Right.
More than, but there are
actually the nightclub scene in the movie reminded me of World Jones Made as well. So
yeah. And it should be noted that Hampton Fancher and David Peoples, who, or is it Peebles or Peoples? Anyways, they have a good relationship with each other, and they got along. And Hampton Fancher actually appreciated, even though he was upset at first that they were hiring another screenwriter. He said that a lot of the suggestions that Ridley had made that he didn't think were practical, that Peoples was able to fix, and so he appreciated that. But he did, and they did bring Hampton Fancher back to Fancher to do the last rewrite. So he was a co-writer. He was still involved. They never totally pushed him out. They just brought somebody else in to finish it. And David Peoples, people should know, he's most famous for having written 12 Monkeys and The Unforgiven, which...
Have either one of you seen the what 12 Monkeys is based on? Legit?
The short, yes, I have.
I have.
It's a really great short film. I recommend it to anyone who's interested in 12 Monkeys.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I also have been inspired by this. I'm going to rewatch Unforgiven, and I also want to watch the Japanese remake as well, because I've never seen that.
I've never seen that either.
Yeah.
But I watched Unforgiven a couple months ago. It stands
hold up?
It's a really good movie.
Yeah. It has one of my favorite lines from a movie ever, when he said, you just shot an unarmed man. He should have been armed.
Then he should have armed himself or something.
Yeah, he should have been armed.
No, that movie has that great line too, where he's like, "They should have thought about that before they hung my friend from the front of the saloon."
Yeah.
Great movie. And Hampton Fancher, of course, came back to work on the script for 2049. So he stayed kind of in the... He only made one... Hampton only made one other movie in 1999. He wrote and directed a thriller called Minus Man with Owen Wilson and Janine Garofalo, which I have not seen, but now I kind of want to see it. And that was 1999. So he didn't work much after this, but he did make his mark by doing this. And so his first script, and Larry kind of already spoiled this a little bit, but he wrote The Mighty Quinn as well.
Oh yeah, that's right. I like that movie a lot.
Yeah. So he has a short filmography, but all quality stuff from Yeah. And so the thing about the Hampton Fancher script is that it's not any closer to the novel than the finished movie is. Really.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's not. It's also a noir, and it has some really interesting things in it. But you did point out correct.
So I want to ask. There's no mention of mercerism or any of those elements in his original screenplay?
No, there is not. There's no mercerism. There's no mood organs. But all the scenes that are the most faithful to the novel, like the owl, the empathy parts, the empathy test, they're all in the first version of the screenplay. They all come from that. Okay. And I think it's unfair to cut Hampton out because so many of the scenes of the final movie are just word for word exactly the same. And there's been a lot made of Rutger Hauer improvising a lot of the Roy Batty dialogue, and that may be the case. But what's really interesting when you read the screenplay is even going back to the 1980 draft, a lot of Harrison Ford's dialogue is exactly the same, like word for word.
Well, what I read about the Rutger Hauer stuff is that he didn't so much improvise a lot, is that he just shortened a lot of what was originally in the screenplay and sort of make it less I don't know, less verbose, less screenwritery and more charactery.
Right. Well,
I mean, we've seen that, right? Like, have you ever heard a character talk? And I do this all the time with my girlfriend. We're sitting on the couch and a character starts talking. I go, no, that's a screenwriter talking. Like exactly. When you can tell the screenwriter is talking, it's like, tone it down.
You kind of want
down, Tarantino.
If you have a part like that, you want an actor that can turn it into real life. I mean, that's the actor's job, is to make it a real life person.
Yes. Correct.
So so there's some interesting notes about that first draft of the screenplay, but you're right. Hampton Fancher was the only person involved in the production of the movie who actually read To Android's Dream of Electric Sheep.
And to me, this goes against the grain of what we consider good filmmaking. We consider good filmmaking paying attention to the source material, knowing where it's coming from, making sure that you follow the beats of the source material, and going from there. But this goes against that entirely.
Yeah, in fact, Ridley Scott told David Peoples not to read
the book.
Yeah.
Well, maybe because Ridley Scott was like, we're not going to spend all this time with those electric gas animal wars.
But he had never read the book. I mean, who knows if he even knew about it.
He didn't read it either.
Nope.
No,
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
No, Ridley Scott did not read the book. And it's really annoying to me as a fan of Philip K. Dick and a fan of the novel, when you watch the bonus or supplementary material for all the different discs, how many times different actors involved make a point of saying, I didn't finish reading it. Ridley didn't finish reading it, so I didn't finish reading it.
The whole cast made up of me, baby. Just, oh, fuck this.
Right.
Right. Well, and it actually annoyed me after a while, because after like the third or fourth person said I didn't even finish it, I was like, well, fuck you then. Like,
they are actors. They're not.
Yes,
a lot of actors don't want to get into someone else's vision of what a character should be, so they don't get confused about it.
Well, I think had the script maybe followed the book more, they might have been more motivated to do that. But since they probably read the script and knew that, this isn't even going to be like the book, I'm not going to waste my time with it.
Well, and when you read the book, the first thing that happens is, he talks to his wife and goes out and pets a fake sheep. So it's like,
I remember.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Maybe I don't need to read this to know what the movie's about.
It's going to be one of these books. Okay.
So some things that are different in the so Rick Deckard is just in the original 1980 script. He's just come back from a job, retiring some skin jobs in Alaska. And he comes back by train into San Angeles, which is the city that encompasses all of Southern California.
I like that.
Yeah, there's in fact,
you don't like it?
I don't like the name.
Yeah.
Dumb.
Really? It's perfect.
That name is dumb.
Or La Frisco.
So,
sorry, David.
Yeah, it's okay. So one thing that is interesting to note about the 1980 draft is that there is voiceover, and there is noir detective.
That's right.
Voiceover in this version of the script. And in fact, during this opening voiceover, there's a line, 2 hours earlier, I was drinking Aquavit with an Eskimo lady in Northeast Alaska. That's a tough change to make. When he gets back to, which is not rainy San Angeles in the script, but like a heat, like humid, like.
Or more like it is in the book.
Yeah.
Where
And
it's sandy and dry and
yes,
gross.
There's a part of San Angeles that a lot of the script takes place in that's called Drop City, which is the underground part of Los Angeles. And the thought was that when Hampton Fancher wrote this first script is that they weren't going to have a lot of money to do exteriors, so a lot of it had to take place inside. So he had this idea of putting most of Los Angeles underground to get away from the heat, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm. Makes
there's
sense.
some funny commercials for replicants about like how you can buy your slave replicant or slave Andy, and it's Andy's in this script too, like so you can buy an Andy to slave away and do all the hard work for you. There's these funny commercials,
which I have to say was also a good choice, getting rid of Andys and androids.
Yes, and that was David Peebles who did that, and I'll have more on that later. Hannibal Chew's Black Market Shop was not the ice like in the cooler. Like I said, it was a party, kind of like World Jones made.
So was Fancher just a fan of this book, or was he a PKD fan?
I think he was just a fan of this book. I don't see anything where he's talking about other PKD stuff, but one of the lines that I liked in this script was, and one of the scenes that's exactly the same as the scene with Emmett Walsh, where he's talking to him, but there was a line that was a little different, where he says something to Deckard about basically, why haven't you gotten off world? Like, why haven't you gone to one of the colonies? And Deckard says, I make a lot of complaints about this fucking city, but I'd rather be here than there. And I like that line a lot.
I want to mention here that I got to work with Emmett Walsh back in like the late 90s, and that guy is super cool.
Yeah, and he was the doctor in Fletch who stuck his hand up Chevy Chase's ass. So.
Right.
And
he's great in Blood Simple. I mean, that's a great movie. But yeah,
he's a great actor, and he's incredible in his one scene. And what's interesting is, like Harrison Ford, a lot of his lines and dialogue were in the first draft of the first screenplay, word for word. And it's interesting because none of the Roy Batty lines are the same. And which leads me to a couple years ago, Rob Lowe was on Mark Maron, and he was making fun of another actor, not by name, but he was clearly talking about Rutger Hauer.
Because we talked about
Yes, I remember that episode. Yes.
Yeah, and he was talking about the fact that Rutger Hauer refused to learn his lines when they did the Salem's Lot miniseries.
Right.
And that when Rutger Hauer, and he didn't say Rutger Hauer by name, but he said that the guy, when he was confronted about the fact that he wasn't learning his lines, started going on about how I have one of the greatest improv scenes in the history of cinema, i.e. the Tears in the Rain.
Right.
And so what's funny is when you read the script, you can see that, like, Harrison Ford's learning his lines, Emmett Walsh is learning his lines and delivering them perfect, and Roy Batty's dialogue is like all over the place.
Well, the question is it better the way he did it or how it's written in the script?
Well, in this case, I would say it is better, but I'm not saying that it works for every time, because
every role, every time.
Yeah, because he was definitely not good in that Salem's Lot movie. I don't know.
Yeah, well, Rutger Hauer has just as many bad films as good films. So one of the things about Hannibal Chu's black market replicant shop / crazy bar is there is a razor blade eater named the Amazing Rama, just to give you like how kind of weird and different than James Hong in a fucking freezer in the final version. So that's very different. There's lots of random just noir voiceovers. Some of it is info dumpy and moves the story forward, but a lot of it is just random. Like there's this one. Yeah, that's what I heard about sorry, David, but that's what I heard about the voiceover from Fancher, was that what they say is he wrote beautiful like soliloquies that didn't have anything to do with moving the plot forward or the way they wanted to do it at the end, but they were really great in showing character and the world and just ethereal things that didn't matter, but they were really well written. That's what I heard.
Some of them were, and some of them I really liked, but then they have some that are like this one that is in the middle of a foot chase. And then like the scene ends and the action scene's over, and then he just says, I knew a cop once who was involved in a high-speed chase. They shot out one of his tires and he went off a cliff at 150 miles an hour. They found him in the morning with a broken skull, six fractured ribs and second-degree burns. On the way to the hospital, he made a play for the nurse. And it was like...
That's awesome.
Nothing to do with the story, but...
That has zero to do with anything.
With anything.
Yeah, but I'm not totally against it, but that one stuck out to me because I just laughed at how he's just like, yeah, and he made a play for the nurse. And when you look at some of the people they considered casting for this role, for a long time, Fancher...
Which role?
For Deckard.
Okay.
Like one of his original picks was Clint Eastwood, but who Ridley Scott came the closest to was Dustin Hoffman, which makes zero sense.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah, as a hard-boiled detective, I can't really see it. I mean, he was great in Marathon Man, but
right,
that's more of a victim-y type character and not
right.
A brooding detective. So
that's all I got on the 1980s script, but I do think it's a fun script to read. It's not. I definitely think the finished film is better. There's certain things like James
again flying in the face of the accepted logic.
Right. Well, Peoples did reach out to Fancher and did talk to him about what the book meant to him and like what he was trying to say, and he retained a lot of the scenes that are the most connected to the novel, because it's easy to say that this movie has nothing to do with the novel, but that's not true. It's subtle, but it's not like iRobot or something like that. iRobot has absolutely nothing to do with the source material at all.
And also
but it has Will Smith.
Sucks.
I didn't like it either. It's bad. Will Smith and the other guy, the bad guy.
I don't even remember.
He's also the bad guy in LA Confidential. Fuck. The old guy.
James Cromwell?
Cromwell, thank you.
Yeah, I don't hate iRobot as much as you guys, but it was a disappointment considering that it's the same director as Dark City. You'd hope for more, but so Fancher, as far as that script goes, I did really appreciate it. I'm glad I got to read and see like the evolution of it. I do think the final movie is better. Peoples came on and did a lot of the things that, like Fancher said, that Ridley Scott had wanted him to do, that Fancher didn't think were going to make sense. And some of the characters that get invented and some of the things, like Edward James Olmos's character is not in the 1980 version. The storyline with Chris and Sebastian gets moved back. It's in the Fancher script, but it gets moved back and shortened. And
really?
One scene, and the scene where he's like, I'm from the moral, where he goes to that lady with the snake and all that, that's in the first 1980 script as well.
Okay.
Yeah. And
well, that's kind of similar to what's in the novel. How he approaches the opera singer woman.
Yeah.
Because she's a replicant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the term replicant was People's creation. His daughter was a scientist, and she had been talking about cell replication, and he and Ridley Scott talked about how the term android was overused. So that was the thing. I have less to say, or I did less research about the actual movie because I think there's a lot of documentaries and a lot of things out there, and there's only so much we can say about that. But I do think that these aspects and how PKD interacted with the movie is really interesting because, as we know, he only got to see 20 minutes finalized before he died. I think he got to see like rough parts of the rest of it, but they had only actually wrapped and finished the opening, which is some of the best parts of the movie as far as if you're only going to see a little bit of the movie, that's the good part to see.
All those street scenes and the that opening shot, which is incredible. Going over the cityscape. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I get chills. Even now, I've seen the movie 30 times. I still get chills in that opening shot, just seeing all the flames coming out of the smokestacks and it's just great.
Yeah. It's really incredible, and it's quite of a feat of achievement of production. I mean, we have to remember at this point, Ridley Scott did have Alien, but that was really his only big hit. At this point, he wasn't the Ridley Scott that we know now, with the power that.
I mean, the Ridley Scott we dislike now, or some of us at least.
I don't totally feel that way, but. What
was the last movie Ridley Scott did?
Well, he directed the pilot.
Covenant.
I'm not sure, but he directed the pilot for Raised by Wolves, which
last movie
which
he
liked.
Covenant.
Which Dave and I saw together in theaters, and it was bad.
Yeah.
Covenant.
I'm a defender of Prometheus, but well, that's for another.
We know that's gonna happen on this show. We're gonna do a Prometheus bonus episode.
So one of the
now let's talk a little bit about Tony Scott. So.
Oh yeah, well we can talk about Tony Scott all day.
So the thing about this production is it was a $22 million budget, which is pretty big for the time, but not astronomical. Having Harrison Ford, of course, attached was very helpful in moving the movie forward. It has a pretty good cast. What's really interesting is that the movie was, I think it was set up at a different studio, and before Warner Brothers picked it up at the end, Alan Ladd's production company had to save it from the film was going to be canceled. And if you don't know the name Alan Ladd was the head of 20th Century Fox when he greenlit a little movie called Star Wars. And he was the only person in Hollywood that believed in Star Wars. So Alan Ladd has some serious sci-fi cred, but also serious Hollywood cred.
Kind of a big deal.
It's kind of a big deal. But another interesting name that is attached to this is it's one of the rare English language movies that has a production credit for Run Run Shaw, one of the brothers behind Shaw Brothers Studios in Hong Kong, which is really interesting. Now, I don't know exactly how Run Run Shaw got involved, but from best I can tell, he put money in to get domestic rights in China. To release it in Asia, but the Shaw Brothers didn't do a ton of science fiction, although they did do Inframan, which I think is great cheesy sci-fi movie.
In answer to your question, Anthony,
it's easy watching. What?
Ridley Scott's last directed movie was All the Money in the World, which was the
was that where they digitally removed Kevin Spacey?
That is exactly the movie.
Yeah, that is exactly.
Yeah, I never saw it because it sounded boring as shit.
It's not a bad movie. I mean, I don't know if I saw that one. It's the story is interesting.
All right, so the production was not super expensive, but they obviously spent a lot of money and time and detail on the special effects and the models. Those of us I lived in Portland, and at Movie Madness we used to have they have at the video store in Portland, they have a prop museum, and they had some of the models from Blade Runner, and it was really cool because they had one of the buildings intact at Movie Madness, and it's cool to see what those models look like. And what's really cool is if you watch the 4K or the Blu-ray versions that are out, it's amazing how well the special effects in this movie hold up.
Well, if you're watching the final, what is it called? The final version?
Final cut. Yeah.
The final cut. It's all been digitally redone.
Yeah.
Everything's been brightened. Everything's been repaired and mistakes taken out. All kinds of stuff has been redone. Yeah,
and if you watch, for example, they took out the bad stunt lady double from the breaking of the glass scene, and they actually refilmed her face. And
they for the digital part where he's looking at the photo, I read that they actually put Joanne Woodward's face on that picture instead
Cassidy. It's Joanne Cassidy.
Joanna Cassidy? Yeah, whatever. Joanna Cassidy's face on that picture instead of some woman that was clearly not her.
Yeah. True.
There's all kinds of stuff like that in the movie.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the cast. What do you guys think about Harrison Ford as Deckard? I think
the part Harrison Ford was made to play. Because
really?
frankly, Harrison Ford is not a great actor.
Well,
Harrison Ford
but he's charismatic and he's good looking.
Yes.
In much in the same way people say that, I don't like Will Smith. He's not a great actor. Maybe not, but he's charismatic and he does a good job with the roles that he chooses. And
Will Smith, every once in a while, when he decides to act, he is really good at it.
Yeah, he was.
Harrison Ford decides to act.
he's the same.
He's good, but he's not really, really good. Like
especially now, not now.
Coast, if you watch the Mosquito Coast or Regarding Henry, he's good in those movies, but you wouldn't say like he's on a level with Marlon Brando or anything. You know?
No. But now he's like, go ahead, David.
I think that this role and Indiana Jones are kind of roles that they're kind of made for him.
Yeah, he's made to play these roles.
Yeah, and I think he is really good as Deckard. I can't really see anybody else in it. I don't really like him as much as Deckard in 2049. He's one of my least favorite aspects.
Because he didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
He didn't want to be there.
Don't you hate that part of 2049 that he's there at all?
Well, yes. I actually think it does. It's kind of fan servicey, and I don't really enjoy it. But it's also very evident that Harrison Ford doesn't want to be there. He delivers all the lines flatly, and he couldn't even be bothered to wear anything beyond what he showed up to set in that day in. But he wore this fucking t-shirt and jeans. Movie. You're going to shoot me in this fucking t-shirt and jeans. Okay? Yeah, and for the Star Wars movies, they're like, here, just put the Han Solo vest on then.
Well, I would have to, and we're going to rewatch 2049 eventually. I'd have to watch it again. But my last memory of it was that I didn't think it ruined the movie or didn't take me out of the movie.
I'm not saying it ruined the movie, David. What I'm saying is that it seemed unnecessary.
Yeah, I would have had less of Deckard and tried to minimize that if I was doing it. But at the same time, like, I think in this movie, he's great. And I think how uncomfortable and what a crappy time he was having actually comes out in the movie.
Yeah.
It's great because it should be uncomfortable. There's a couple things I noticed this time that I hadn't noticed before. I like that after he gets in the spinner and is heading to the police station that he's still eating his noodles, which I had never noticed before. And I love the use I just think that, and it was interesting for me to see how he was. I guess you always know that actors are delivering lines from the script, but to see like how well he was translating and performing the actual dialogue as written was, in this time that I saw it, was quite a revelation for me.
Yeah, you watch the scenes with what's her face with
Rachel.
With Rachel, and they're, I mean, he's stellar in those scenes.
Yeah,
just the emotion he actually puts forth. I'm surprised it's Harrison Ford. You know, I'm not used to seeing that much emotion coming out of him.
Why was there never a Hannibal Chew spinoff? That's what I want.
I don't know.
That would be great. Anyway, yeah. Go on.
He was busy filming Lo Pan for Big Trouble in Little China. But I will say we don't really have any quotes from PKD talking specifically about Harrison Ford, but it had to have been a big deal to have Han Solo, and a year after Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, to have
Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, Harrison Ford be in your movie. So I'm sure PKD was excited about that, and definitely better casting than, can you imagine this movie with Dustin Hoffman? Because that's who Ridley Scott wanted.
I don't know. Dustin Hoffman is one of those actors that can do almost anything, but it's hard to see him in this role, even as good as he is.
If they played it closer to the novel, I could see that Deckard being played by Dustin Hoffman, but not this Deckard. You
have a point there. Yeah, if it was based more on the novel.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in the novel, that Deckard's a little more kind of, I don't want to say nebbish, but he is more of a sad sack.
Sad sack.
Yeah, like a nebbish sad sack.
Yep.
So we do have PKD quotes on two of the members of the cast. Anthony, specifically on Rutger Hauer first.
So PKD on Rutger Hauer. I was looking at the stills of him and I said, Oh my god, this is the Nordic Superman that Hitler said would come marching out of the laboratory. This is the blonde beast that the Nazis were creating. And of course, the origin of the book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, was my research into the Nazis for The Man in the High Castle.
Yeah. Yeah, and so what he means by that is that the original inspiration for Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep was thinking about the concept of empathy and the inability for artificial humans to feel empathy. And he was thinking about the Nazis and like why they lost their
the Ubermensch.
Yeah.
Noted Hollywood heartthrob Rutger Hauer.
Hey, he did.
He is sort of the Aryan ideal. I mean, that's
kind of. Sure. But I mean, did you guys see him in Split Second?
Or Hobo with a Shotgun.
Hey, I lied. That's a great movie. But yeah, go on, David.
Well, and this was before he did do the leading man thing in Lady Hawk, which I recently rewatched. And
yeah, but that was in what year did that come out? 84?
87.
Oh, was it really that late? Wow.
I think so. I
guess 84 was the Hitchhiker or whatever it was.
That was great.
And that's a fantastic film.
Yeah. As far as Lady Hawk, I recently rewatched it, and I personally found it it did not hold up, and
the cringe factor is in the soundtrack for me.
The soundtrack is super terrible. And it was funny. A friend of the show, Seth Heasley from Who Goes There, recently was like, "Oh, I love that soundtrack," and I'm just like,
I actually like the soundtrack, but just not with the movie.
Okay, I see what you're saying. It does not fit the movie. It's one of the worst.
Yeah.
Soundtracks for not fitting the movie.
Yeah, right.
Lady Hawk. Yeah, I did watch that a couple months ago, and I was really excited to watch that and Willow, and then Lady Hawk was so bad I still haven't watched Willow. I was like, oh, I don't know. That one didn't hold up. But we also have a PKD quote on Sean Young.
PKD on Sean Young. Sean Young, who plays Rachel, I've never seen her act. I've seen Harrison Ford act, and I've seen Rutger Hauer act, but when I saw those stills of her, I was blown away. I said, that's Rachel. You could have hung pictures of 100 different women, and I would have unerringly picked out that one as Rachel. That's not a simulation of Rachel. That is Rachel. They went and found her. It's the femme fatale, Belle Dom Sans Mercy, PKD, you're tripping me up here, that I eternally write about, and now I've seen a photograph of her, and I know that she exists. I've shown the pictures to several of my friends, and they all agree that that's exactly how they imagined her.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We knew.
I mean, I don't know. Tell me how you feel about this. This is sort of the science. This movie has sort of the science fiction version of the Gilligan's Island thing between Ginger and Mary Ann. Like, what kind of person are you? Do you prefer Pris or Rachel? Is the same question as do you prefer Ginger or Mary Ann?
Well, I think you know my answer. I think you both know my answer. It's Pris.
Yeah. But David? I think that's I think it's fundamentally the same question, don't you?
Yeah, I agree.
And I'm definitely a Rachel guy myself, so.
David?
I don't know.
They sort of do represent...
David is like the Voight-Kampff machine is my choice.
I was thinking of Robin Wright's character in the sequel, but...
Fair.
They do sort of represent a certain archetype. Each character does.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's hard for me to say because I actually think it's almost like a mood thing with which character I find more intriguing. But I'm also just more interested in the nuances of Rachel as being somebody who is who's meant to think she was human and have memories and has to come to grips with in the movie finding out that she is an artificial person. Right. Is really interesting, and unfortunately, I would say one of the few things about Blade Runner is that I think they examined that, but I think they could have done more.
Really?
That I do like that. You know, there are the scenes where she says to him, like, are you going to retire me? Are you going to, and a lot of that is all in the Hampton Fancher, the first 1980s script.
Right.
Is all there. And I do think that gets to the heart of the question of empathy. And those are some of the scenes that most reflect the novel. It's not, obviously, and it's little moments of world building that I think are really neat in the movie. Like when, of course, it's not a real owl, and all those moments are so brilliantly done in this movie. It's one of the things that I like, that going back as far as the 1980s script.
But that's a difference, isn't it? That I kind of enjoyed in the movie, was that originally in the book, she says it is a real owl.
Right. And
in this, she right away says, of course not.
Yeah. And I think that and maybe it's because I'm writing a science fiction screenplay right now, so I'm thinking a lot about the little details of world building a lot. But
there's so much little detail in this movie about world building that, this is a playground for you in that sense.
Yes, and one of the best examples of that, and we got to talk about Byron James here in a little bit, because ultimate that guy character actor who just shows up and plays like assholes. But in that first scene when he doesn't know what a tortoise is, and he explains to him what a turtle is, that is such amazing world building, because it tells you everything. Like, that the animals are extinct in this world, that people don't even know what a turtle is, and it's not even that weird. And that was some excellent
great scene.
Yeah, excellent world building writing. Yeah, and Byron James, I do want to point him out. If he's a guy who, if you say his name, no one knows who he is, but as soon as you see his face, you're like, oh yeah, like 1,000 assholes.
Right. That guy from The Fifth Element. Oh yeah, I remember him.
Yeah, or Enemy Mine.
That guy from what is it? Another 48 Hours. I remember him.
Yeah, he just consistently played assholes, and I did read that when he came in to read for the part, that he got the part because he actually freaked out the casting director by like staying in character through like coming in and talking to him, and so.
Well, like I said on our Androids episode, he does have my favorite line in the whole movie, which is, "Wake up, time to die." I love that line.
No, it's great, and he also has the "Let me tell you about my mother" line. Which is great. That I will say, even though most of that scene is word for word in the Hampton Fancher script, the "Let me tell you about my mother" was not. That was not.
Really?
Yeah, that's one of that scene is word for word, almost exactly the same, except for that. And then one thing that was really interesting, just to show you the difference in how a filmmaker chooses to do things, is that the scene where Deckard gives the Voight-Kampff test to Rachel is almost exactly written the same. The dialogue's all the same, but Ridley Scott chose to move the camera away from Rachel during the moment when, right after she says, "Are you testing me to see if I'm a replicant or a lesbian?"
Yeah.
That line's in the Hampton Fancher script. It says android, but it says, "Are you testing me?" And then...
Well, it's also in the novel, so...
Right. So then the camera pulls away, and then he cuts away. But in the script, there was a line where you realize that the picture that she's talking about with the other woman, she's laying on a bearskin rug, like in the novel.
Right.
And Ridley Scott cut away before she said that, which kind of takes away like how it relates to the Voight-Kampff test. So in a way, I think it's kind of a mistake. It's a nitpick.
Well, so does the mother question in the opening scene. I mean, they're both. We know from the novel that these are animal questions for the most part, where they're searching for empathy, as Terrell says. They're looking for reactions, but we do get Rachel's lack of empathy when she doesn't answer the dog question.
Right.
So I can see just wanting to get through that part. And I mean, once you hit, are you asking if I'm a such and such or a lesbian? You know, sort of. Do you need the bearskin part?
No, you don't need it,
Yeah.
but it might thematically make more sense. But it's just interesting to note that that's where he cut the scene, and just a little bit of behind the scenes from where the script was.
But wasn't that beautiful? I mean, like the cinematography of that scene with the shade coming down and the distance from the desk, and oh man, everything about that scene is beautiful.
Every scene in this movie is beautiful.
Well,
Every scene you could take and put in a frame. It's a beautifully done movie.
Right. And one thing that's interesting on that is that the cinematographer, whose name is escaping me, he had Parkinson's disease.
He had Parkinson's that he died of later.
Yeah, and he finished the movie in a wheelchair, actually. And so
But he was brilliant. I mean,
yeah, it's a brilliant final performance as a cinematographer, and I'm sorry,
I'll get you. I'll get the name.
okay. So
I think he deserves a strong mention here.
yeah. So anyways, I don't think we need to review the movie scene by scene. I think most everybody's seen it.
Oh God, please let's not do that.
So what I would say is, what I want to ask both of you and try to get our thoughts on for a second is, how is watching Blade Runner different now that we've spent 2 years doing this podcast and thinking about PKD? Did you have a different experience watching it this last time? For you, Larry, that was this morning. For me, it was last night. And Anthony, you watched it a couple weeks ago. Well, how is it different watching it now, knowing what you know about PKD? Did it make a difference in how you watched it, Anthony?
Yeah, because I'm looking for little PKD Easter eggs, little things. And I'm also watching it with the eye of how would Dick have looked at this adaptation of his work, getting to know him through his writing. I often wonder if he would even like any of the adaptations that they did of his work. And I know he liked the first, 20 minutes that he saw of it, at least the visuals. But I so often find myself asking, do we see androids the way Dick had intended us to see them? You know, because I think we look at the androids with a lens of empathy and sympathy that Dick didn't have for them. And I could be wrong, but I oftentimes wonder that. And then in a lot of other ways, I think I'm just watching a movie that's riffing off of his source material and doing its own thing.
Right.
Yeah, and I definitely felt that this time. The last time I watched... Well, probably not the last time I watched Blade Runner, but I know the last time I read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, I watched Blade Runner right afterwards. And because I had it so much in my head that they were nothing alike, or like they're so different, that that particular time that I watched it, I was like, well, there's actually more of the novel in here than I thought, right?
Yeah.
And then this time I had the exact kind of opposite stance where the last time I thought there was more of it than I realized, and this time, especially reading the script, I was like, wow, there's a lot missing, and that's fine. And there are things like they made the right choices. There's no, the mood organ thing maybe could have fit into some scenes of it, but the Mercer
Not
stuff,
really.
the Mercer stuff doesn't need to be there. It doesn't,
Well,
I think
like
it
that
would
stuff
be-
to begin with. I think I recall you not liking Mercerism even in the novel.
Yeah, I wasn't like a huge fan of it, but the graphic novel adaptation, which is like a faithful adaptation, would be interesting to see, because I do think there is a way to faithfully adapt Do Androids Dream that would be a very different thing, and I'm glad we have the Blade Runner that we do,
Yeah, I prefer it.
Yeah.
I
don't think I would like to see it. I don't think I would enjoy a direct adaptation of the book.
Right.
I think it depends on who does it. To adapt it would be to fundamentally change how we view Blade Runner, like, because it's not Blade Runner, and Blade Runner is really not Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep.
Yeah.
It's an adaptation, but it stands off on its own, and so does the book. So realistically, a more faithful adaptation, I personally think, wouldn't even count as a Blade Runner remake.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Personally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe what you could do is something like Dr. Sleep. And what Dr. Sleep did was...
Suck?
I like that movie. What Dr. Sleep did was...
Get the bed in the third act.
All right, I like Dr. Sleep, but what Dr. Sleep did was
Energy vampires, really?
try to be a sequel to both the book and the movie, which are very different.
It's a very hard thing to do, huh?
It's a tough thing to do, and I think that Mike Flanagan struck the balance in between personally. But I was a fan.
I was very on board until we went back to the Overlook Hotel and it turns into a goofy-ass Goosebumps movie. Awful. All the stuff at the Overlook Hotel is awful. But
Right.
this is not a podcast about Dr. Sleep.
No, it was Jordan Cronenweth who had Parkinson's.
Yeah. All right, so I do have a quote here, Anthony, from Norman Spinrad about comparing the movie and the film, and I do think that this quote is pretty interesting.
The core of the novel, the essential story, is the core of the film. The intellectual level of the screenplay and its perceived audience are both much closer to the intent of Dick than to action-adventure. And the theme, in its mode of expression, are intellectually and spiritually true to the novel to an impressive degree.
One thing that I noticed, too...
Wait, who was that from?
Spinrad.
Okay.
One thing I noticed in this version, or this viewing of it, also was that one of the things I like is, and this has to do with the difference between Harrison Ford and Rutger Hauer as actors, that entire last battle between Roy Batty and Deckard, like, Batty doesn't shut the fuck up, and Deckard doesn't say a fucking word.
He doesn't say one word.
He does not say a word. He does not give a shit about...
Yeah, Batty likes to hear himself talk.
Yeah. So I do think that that's interesting. Now, you know what's really interesting is that no one's ever tried to make a prequel about the replicants in the off-world colonies, and there's never been a story set in the Blade Runner universe in the off-world colonies, whether it's a graphic novel or animation or whatever. Is that something either of you guys would like?
I feel like someone's doing something with that. I feel like there's something, I heard something or read something about them doing some off-world Blade Runner stuff. Maybe in the coming TV show?
I don't know. I think I talked about how Volume 2 of the graphic novel takes place off-world.
Maybe,
but it has nothing to do with the original replicants leaving. It has nothing to do with the Nexus 6 replicants, and they're kind of moving from where the colony to.
But there is a part that's on the colonies, right?
In the comic?
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. That the entire Volume 2 for the most part takes place off-world.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't really give a shit about prequels. I don't need to know the story of. I know what happened. They came. Okay, I get it. I don't need to be shown all the things all the time, and I notoriously hate prequels. So for me, I wouldn't be that interested.
You know what I would like to see is I would like to see something that was set in Hong Kong in this world, like the Hong Kong of this world.
Well, if we're talking about just things we'd like to see done
then you should read William Gibson. That's basically what it is.
That aren't Blade Runner specific, aren't specific to the Blade Runners. I would love something that is more focused on the creators of the replicants. That would be my jam. Like
more about the Terrell Corporation.
Yeah, and those responsible for designing the actual replicants and things like that. That would be interesting to me.
Okay, so we do have a little bit of notes on, in quotes, of what PKD thought, because this is This is the only time of all the. So we have this segment that we do on the show. Would Dick like it? And this is the only time that we actually have a few quotes from PKD.
I recognized it immediately. It was my own interior world. They caught it perfectly. I couldn't believe... Wait, hold on. There we go.
So that first quote, when he says, I recognized it immediately, there was a story about the special effects of the film on an upcoming thing on the news. And this quote was him reacting to seeing the news story about the special effects.
I couldn't believe what I was reading. It was simply sensational. Still Hampton Fancher's screenplay, but miraculously transfigured, as it were. The whole thing had simply been rejuvenated in a very fundamental way. After I finished reading the screenplay, I got the novel out and looked through it. The two reinforce each other, so that someone who started with the novel would enjoy the movie, and someone who started with the movie would enjoy the novel. Oh, PKD, I do not agree. I was amazed that people could get some of those scenes to work. It taught me things about writing that I didn't know.
And then he wrote to Chris Hummel, and I apologize, I don't know who Chris Hummel is, and I Googled, and I don't know who that
Didn't find anything.
So if anybody knows, you can put a comment.
Chris, I haven't yet seen the film in complete form, but I did see about 20 minutes of it, and it is super. I'm not kidding. The opening scene is simply beyond belief. It is likely that in late February we'll be shown a rough cut of the total film, but they're running behind schedule, I understand. Blade Runner is truly a dynamic film.
All right.
Very true.
And Russell Galen, the agent, was trying to pressure PKD to go see the sets and to visit the sets, so that's the next quote.
The sets, I'm sure, are marvelous. Russell called me up and said, you've got to go up there. Well, in a way, it's a Chinese finger trap. If the sets are that good, maybe I'll go up there and fall into the mode that exists now in science fiction, where the special effects and the sets are everything. And as an author, I can't afford, as a practical matter, to adopt that ideology, because it reduces the author to merely setting up a simple plot outline in which special effects can be brought in. His job is very much a means to an end, rather than an end in itself. Ridley Scott is a director who has a visual sense rather than a narrative sense. This is not a matter of insulting Ridley Scott. He thinks visually. And of course, this is why he's in movies. It's perhaps the way it should be. But I am an author, and I think in narrative terms, in terms of a storyline. Listen, if you want to make fucking sets out of anything I've written, invite me to the set. I'm happy to show up.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was a weird quote. But,
I think Dick just doesn't like Hollywood. I think that's really what it comes down to.
Well, frankly, looking at sets and stuff, you can understand it's not very interesting to everyone. And it's just a bunch of stuff. If you've ever walked through a movie studio or anywhere where they make sets, it's kind of cool, but it's also kind of boring.
I disagree. So, I always have a good time, but I like that shit. So,
yeah.
When I was a production assistant, I loved being on set. Building a set is fun. Seeing how they do it, seeing the finished product, and having been there and knowing what it looked like on the other side, I think is awesome. I love it. Hire me as a production assistant.
Terrible job.
Well, two different views, my man. Yes, I have carried trash bags full of bagels to set, and that was my job. But I've also set up the lighting rigs. That was also my job at one point. So
also boring.
What, David?
Well, Larry built sets for stage.
Yeah, I know. And he and I have different opinions.
Yeah.
I worked on Babylon 5, for fuck's sake.
That's true. So, look, that was just a weird quote. But one thing that I did want to mention before I forget, I meant to mention this in the David Peoples part. He also did write the screenplay for Soldier.
No, really?
Yeah.
I've never seen that movie all the way through.
I kind of hate Anthony missing this part because it's kind of funny. But he says that in his mind, Soldier takes place in the Blade Runner universe, which makes me kind of want to see it again.
Yeah, right.
But
maybe it could be a Dick-like suggestion if it really seems like it.
If it holds up, because I haven't seen it since back in the day, and I remember it being good, but it's also a Paul W.S.
Anderson. I love Paul W.S. Anderson. He is raw action, and I like that about him. Unapologetic.
Yeah, I did like Event Horizon, although I don't know how well it holds up. But I did like the TV show he did a while back. I did think that was the one for YouTube. I actually thought was.
Well, I don't know what that was.
I don't remember what it was called either. I
liked his Death Race movies, and I enjoy the Resident Evil movies.
Yeah, I wasn't down for the Death Race movies because Death Race 2000 is one of my favorite movies, and I didn't like the change in vibe. But if he says Soldier and Kurt Russell takes place in the same universe as Blade Runner, that is interesting. In his mind, anyways, it's in the same universe as Blade Runner, whether it's canon or not. All right, so the last section we always do is, would we do it differently? And that's kind of...
We didn't do much comparing.
Oh, between the two? Yeah, if you want to do a little bit more comparing, I think... obviously the elements of the noir elements are there in the novel, but they're not in the forefront like they are in the movie.
What's going on there, Anthony?
I'm trying to get rid of this light band that's wrapped itself.
You got a light mustache.
Yeah. I can't get rid of it because these fucking blinds suck. Hold on. Now that's worse.
Glowing. Are you pregnant?
Right? You're glowing. Oh.
Always. Pregnant with rage.
Just like I'm always hungry. Hungry for justice.
Are you?
No.
Yeah, I think the noir elements are there, but I don't think it's quite the complete noir.
Turn your laptop more, so you're more centered.
Better?
Yeah, it's better. Yeah, that works.
Yeah, so I think the noir elements are there, but it's not in the forefront like it is in the movie, in the novel, and there are so many other issues and things with, like, obviously the animal storyline is completely minimized in the film to the point where it's just...
you kind of have to.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't play really well on film. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that will disagree with that, but how do you film that and make it interesting and not goofy? That's the key, is to make it not goofy. You could film it, but it's going to look pretty goofy.
Well, what I would like to see a little bit more in PKD adaptations is not go full goof like he does in the books, but just have a tinge of it. Just like in this movie, there's the animal storyline is there, but only in hints with lines like the not knowing what a turtle is, or is that owl real? I would like to see more lines.
The same with the snake. Is that a real snake?
Yeah.
You think I could afford that?
I would like to see more of the PKD tongue in cheek in subtle lines like that are just slightly goofier and funny, and just,
but that's hard to do when you're, because here's the thing, it's really stark, the difference we have in science fiction. Subtlety really doesn't exist in science fiction film. Mm-hmm. Like, either you make a serious science fiction movie or you make a goofy science fiction movie. Either you make Mom and Dad Save the World or Save the Earth, or you make Blade Runner. There's no middle ground in there.
Well, I will say that this is...
Unless you count Battlefield Earth, but I don't think that was intentionally funny.
No, it wasn't. With this movie, I just would like to have seen a little bit more of that maybe just touch on the Mercer thing, touch on the animal thing, just a little bit, more in a way that has the trademark PKD humor, because I do think Skinner Darkly did that, right? Skinner Darkly had moments that were laugh out loud funny, even though the movie was insanely weird.
Yeah.
They did it with scenes that were...
But that one's really out there.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah. I'm not
piggyback on what David's...
What was that?
No, just to piggyback on what David's saying about what he'd like to see more in PKD. I'm assuming just PKD adaptations across the board, right, David?
Yeah.
I think I don't know if I need full goof, more goof, but I would like people to understand the properties a little bit better in that, because here, and I brought this up before, when people are adapting PKD, and whether it be a short film or later adaptations like Minority Report, you're really cribbing from the vibe of Blade Runner. You're not really taking from Dick's work. And what I'd like to see more is more of that, more of the constant questioning of spirituality and the relationship between man and machine, a lot of the not knowing the self and learning who you are through all these kind of connections and interactions.
Just sort of getting closer to PKD's themes.
Yes, because let's be real, all these adaptations just want to reinvent Blade Runner.
Yeah.
And I'm bored with it. It's boring now. I'm over it. There's so much more to pull from.
Hopefully we get a chance to see something like that when we do Confessions, because that's supposed... they made a movie of it, a French movie, so hopefully it's a different kind of thing when we see that. And
I agree. And that's the thing. I think Electric Dreams does a better job of hitting some of those themes
and hitting those beats. Yeah.
Well, and not everything's an action movie, right? There's plenty of Dick stories that aren't pew 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 pew. And I think that
and that's it's rarely the center of the PKD story is the action.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think the only one that really so far that we've read that the action is the center, and I think this is why it's the least popular of his books, is Vulcan's Hammer. That book is about the action, and it's not about the themes hardly at all. But
yeah, I still don't understand that they dislike for Vulcan's Hammer. But
yeah, I don't either, and I don't understand people coming out and saying that Cosmic Puppets isn't as bad as we said it was. It's fucking awful. It's an awful book.
I missed the Ray character and the fake police station. I don't know if it's Ray. Whatever that the other Blade Runner.
The other Blade Runner. I think they kind of that became Gaff, and Gaff just became another Blade Runner.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah,
but it kind of, in a way, but
I agree that because that twist is actually pretty cool in Do Androids Dream.
Yeah, and I think that would have lent more to what you're talking about, the elements of what the thematic element of real versus
what is real,
fake, and what has value and what doesn't, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, but we do have the LA train station doubling as the police station, which was weird seeing Union Station.
Yeah.
As the police. Also, great use of the Bradbury building.
But again, filmed beautifully. I mean, that first shot of the train station, of the police station, which we got to see in the video game as well, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, I wouldn't do much differently. Who would I be to mess with a masterpiece like this? Just to say, I would make some changes.
Yeah, that you're missing elements. It's really not missing elements from the book, I would say.
Yeah.
No, it's not the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in a good way.
I wouldn't do anything differently with this movie unless we would when we already talked about adapting the book, right, in the other episode. And so we didn't
talk about that.
We didn't?
No.
Oh.
Because we knew we were doing this episode, so.
Yeah. And
well.
Yeah, I don't know that and plus it's been adapted for comic books straight from, the source material.
Mm-hmm.
So it is interesting. I think that if you wanted to do something that was split down the middle, like Dr. Sleep, and maybe do a TV series that was somewhat based half on Blade Runner, half on Do Androids Dream, and kind of mixed in between, I think that might work as a different property,
Again, we'll see what the TV show is.
Is there actually one in production?
It's let me see if it's actually in production or if it's just.
Because I don't think that's a bad idea. I mean, considering the fact that we've now had Bates Motel and every network seems to have some kind of prequel to Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, right.
At this point, I don't think it would be bad to do a Blade Runner spinoff or TV show.
What is everybody's obsession with fucking prequels? Wait.
Well,
just move the story forward. Just move it forward. I don't need it to go backward. God.
Well, you can blame my generation for that, Anthony, because we're so much into the lore and figuring out all the elements and bringing everything together that prequels become part of that lore. And
boring.
The Gen X is obsessed with that element.
Well, and I will say this, even though in a lot of ways I like 2049 better, I'm one of the few people that likes the sequel better than Blade Runner, but at the same time, I see more things in 2049. There's so many things I love about 2049, but there's also a few things that there are things I would change about that, whereas Blade Runner...
You could cut a half hour from it, and I'd be okay with it.
You could cut down Deckard's involvement by a lot, I think, and make Deckard...
I think they're different.
Yeah.
For me. I like them both pretty much the same, but for very different reasons.
Yeah. Well, so what I have on the Black Orchid or Black Lotus series is it's been announced, but that's it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I can't say for sure if they're working on it. There's no cast list or directors or writers, anything like that.
Well, they should hire us.
Yes, we are always available for Blade Runner tie-ins. Even if you want me to do a Blade Runner prequel, I'll do that.
Right.
It's fine.
So Blade Runner, any final thoughts on this movie? I think it's interesting to, we had a whole episode going into the Voight-Kampff test with Chris Firth, and so people can kind of get some background on that. We talked about the video game.
There's not much more to talk about when it comes to Blade Runner, I don't think.
Yeah, and I do really think that, we'd like to be involved in the conversation with this movie. If people want to talk to us about it, we love talking Blade Runner. We all are fans, we were fans of Blade Runner to begin with. I think Blade Runner is a better movie than it is a Philip K. Dick adaptation, but it's plays such an important role in because when you guys know, because doing a Philip K. Dick podcast, when you say, I do a podcast about Philip K. Dick to the general public, you have to say, he's the guy who wrote Blade Runner. And
because the first thing they ask you is they go, who? Huh?
Yeah.
And I say, Blade Runner. Oh.
Yeah, it's the same thing like when you talk to people about Richard Matheson, and they're like, who? And you're like, I am
Legend.
I am Legend, dog.
I Am Legend, Twilight Zone. You ever watch The Twilight Zone? Right. Same kind of thing.
I like to say, your favorite episode of The Twilight Zone? Yeah, Matheson probably wrote that.
Yep, exactly. Or maybe Charles Beaumont, because there's a lot of Howling Man fans. So,
true.
But anyways, so Blade Runner, hot take, it's good.
It's great.
I think part of it is that it's Ridley Scott early enough in his career that he was hungry, that he was like trying really hard to make like an insane movie with like great details and incredible.
Yeah, he went overboard. I think because he was so young and so hungry, he went really overboard in the detail in every aspect of making the film. And that worked. I mean, more filmmakers should take that cue.
And it has hold on. Well, go overboard, but he's also inspired decades worth of science fiction visuals in let's do some new stuff, guys. Stop cribbing from Blade Runner. We get it. We get it. You
let's
like
some new visions.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you, Altered Carbon.
Or Mute.
Or Mute. Yes.
Which was a great movie.
Great movie. But that is 130% a PKD, or sorry, a Ridley Scott's Blade Runner-esque world.
Yeah.
All right. So on that note, we'll see folks next month we've got a book episode coming up.
Yeah, and a good one too.
Yeah. I am halfway through reading it at this.
I haven't even started.
Yeah.
I haven't even looked at it.
So we'll see folks back for Ubik. Next month, and we'll have a special guest for that. Ooh. So, all right, folks, keep it paranoid.
Later. Bye. Paranoid.